Welcome. Have you ever felt like you're trying to read a foreign language when people start talking about cybersecurity? Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to translate all that jargon for you. We're breaking down the key terms you absolutely need to know to understand the threats and the defenses that are shaping our digital world.
Okay, let's just dive right in with a question for you. What do you think is the single weakest link in cybersecurity? Is it, I don't know, a super weak firewall, an old server that hasn't been updated? The answer? Well, it might actually surprise you, and it's really the core theme of everything we're about to cover.
So here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 4 parts. First, we'll map out our connected world. Then, we'll dissect the anatomy of a cyber threat. After that, we'll get into the really interesting stuff, how criminals hack the human element. And finally, we'll take a look at the front lines of the ongoing cyber war.
All right, let's start with the absolute basics. You see, before we can even begin to understand the threats out there, we first have to get a handle on the environment they operate in. These are the fundamental building blocks of your digital life.
First up, hardware. It's really simple. This is all the physical stuff you can actually see and touch. We're talking about the parts inside your computer, like motherboards and hard drives, and all the things on the outside, like your keyboard, monitor, and mouse. If your computer were a person, this is the body. Now, if hardware is the body, then you can think of software as the brain. It's the set of instructions that tells all that physical hardware what to actually do. And it comes in 2 main flavors. You've got system software, like your operating system, which is the boss of the whole machine, and then you have application software. Those are the programs we use every single day, like a web browser or a word processor.
Ultimately, all this hardware and software, it's all there to manage and protect one critical thing: data. And in the world of security, we measure how well we're protecting it using something called the CIA Triad. So confidentiality is all about keeping secret, making sure only the right people can see the data. Integrity is about trust, making sure the data is accurate and hasn't been messed with. And availability is simple, making sure you can actually get to your data when you need it.
Of course, our devices don't just exist in a vacuum. They're all connected through networking. This is what lets computers talk to each other and share things. We usually categorize these networks by size. There's the LAN, or Local Area Network, for small spaces, the MAN for a whole city, and the WAN, or Wide Area Network, which can span the globe. And here's a fun fact: the world's very first webcam was invented for one reason and one reason only, so researchers at Cambridge could see if the coffee pot was full without having to get up from their desks.
So let's zoom in on the 2 you'll hear about most. A LAN, the Local Area Network, is small scale. Think your home Wi-Fi or the network at your office. The best analogy is a private house party. It's contained, everyone's local, and it's relatively secure. A WAN, on the other hand, the Wide Area Network, is what connects all those different LANs together over huge distances. The internet itself is the ultimate WAN. Think of it like the global postal system. It's incredibly powerful and connects everyone, but with that massive scale comes a whole lot more security challenges.
Okay, now that we've got the basic landscape down, it's time to start learning the language of digital danger. This is where we learn to talk the talk like a real security pro. You know, every security incident really follows the same basic path. It all kicks off with a vulnerability. Just think of that as an unlocked window in your house. Then you've got the threat, which is the burglar lurking outside who spots that open window. The risk is the potential for something bad to happen, the chance they'll actually try to get in and what you could lose. And finally, the attack. Well, that's the moment the burglar is actively climbing through your window. It's important to remember that security is really a 2-sided coin. On one side, you have protection. That's all the proactive stuff you do before something bad happens. You know, setting up firewalls, using strong passwords, all that good stuff. But on the other side, you have recovery. This is everything you do after an attack has already happened. It's the reactive damage control phase, like restoring from backups and changing all your passwords.
So let's take a look inside the cybercriminal's toolkit. First, you have a virus, which hitches a ride on other programs to spread itself. Then there's the Trojan horse, which disguises itself as something useful to trick you into letting it into your system. Spyware is exactly what it sounds like. It secretly watches what you do to steal your info. And then you have ransomware, which is basically digital kidnapping. It locks up all your files and demands money to get them back.
Sometimes an attacker doesn't want to steal anything. They just want to cause chaos. A denial of service, or DOS attack, does this by flooding a website with so much traffic from one source that it just shuts down. But the real heavy hitter is the DDoS, the distributed denial of service attack.
This uses a whole army of infected computers, we call this a botnet, to launch a massive, synchronized attack from all over the world at once, completely overwhelming the target.
So we've talked a lot about the technology, but this brings us right back to that question I asked at the beginning. Because it turns out the #1 greatest vulnerability in all of cybersecurity, it isn't in the code, it's us. This section is all about hacking the human. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? I mean, why would a criminal spend months and months trying to find a tiny flaw in some complex software when they can just trick a person into handing over the keys to the kingdom? That right there is the core idea behind social engineering. It's not about hacking computers, it's about hacking people. Social engineering is, quite simply, the art of manipulation. It's a way for attackers to bypass all the fancy technical defenses by going straight for our most human traits, our natural willingness to trust, our desire to be helpful, sometimes even our fear of getting in trouble. It's a con game, plain and simple. So where do these con artists get their ammo? From something called open source information. This is basically any scrap of data that's publicly and legally available. I want you to just think about your own social media profiles for a second. Your job history, your birthday, your family members, your hobbies. To you, you're just sharing your life. To an attacker, that is an absolute goldmine of personal information. And here's how they turn that info into a weapon against you. It's a simple 3-step process. First, they research you, grabbing all those little public details. Second, they use that info to craft a super personalized attack, an email that mentions your boss by name, or text about that vacation you just posted photos of. And third, they exploit that sense of familiarity to trick you into clicking a bad link or giving up a password. Now, if you're thinking, oh, this only works on gullible individuals, think again. Between 2013 and 2015, a single attacker managed to steal over $100 million from 2 of the biggest tech companies on the planet, Google and Facebook. And he didn't do it with some crazy, complex hack. Nope, he did it with social engineering, just by sending them fake invoices that looked real, which their accounting departments then paid.
And all of this brings us to our final section. Now that we understand the battlefield and the attacker's playbook, let's flip the script and look at the defenders, their strategies, and what the future of this fight looks like.
Inside big organizations, the defense is usually split between 2 main command centers. First, you have the NOC, the Network Operations Center. They're focused on performance. Their whole job is just to keep the lights on and make sure the network is up and running smoothly. Then you have the SOC, the Security Operations Center. Their focus is purely on security. They're the digital guards on the wall, constantly on the lookout for threats and ready to respond to any incidents.
But you have to understand, this battlefield is changing all the time. Right now, we're dealing with constant challenges like phishing and ransomware, but the threats that are just over the horizon are even scarier. We're talking about AI-enhanced threats that can learn and adapt on the fly, incredibly realistic deepfakes that can create fake audio or video, and attacks that target the billions of smart devices in our homes and offices.
And this isn't science fiction, okay? This stuff is already happening. In one famous case, a CEO got a phone call from someone who sounded exactly like his boss, the head of the entire company. The voice was a perfect AI-generated deepfake. And that CEO was so convinced, he followed the voice's instructions and immediately wired almost $250,000 straight to a scammer.
Which brings us full circle to one last, crucial question. As our technology gets smarter and smarter, as these AI-powered attacks become almost impossible to detect, and as malware gets more and more sophisticated, we have to ask ourselves, does the biggest threat, that single weakest link we talked about at the very start, still remain human? That's the question I want to leave you with.